Justin, what a wonderful introduction, not about me, but about the fate of so many children like William. Ladies and gentlemen, because of Obamacare, there are 298,000 children in the state of Minnesota who are now covered, who had pre-existing conditions in the past. And William, like so many of our children, you know, there's no feeling in the world like a parent turning to look at their child and wondering, God, can I help? Can I do anything about my child's circumstance? And the threat of returning to the possibility that so many people in this state and around the nation would have to turn and look at their child with a pre-existing condition and know there's nothing can be done. I remember when you brought back memories. Remember when the accident occurred in my family and my two sons were very, very badly injured, hospitalized for a long time. I had insurance, but I just know what that feeling is, looking at your child and wondering, are they going to make it? It's one of the reasons why I'm so damn proud to be vice president with President Barack Obama. Chris, thanks. You know, I hate being with this guy. He's too damn good looking and too smart. You know what I mean? But thanks for the passport. Thanks for the passport back into town. And I understand Betty's here. Betty McCollum, Congressman McCollum is somewhere. You should be up here with me. It's great to see you, Betty. And Mr. Mayor, thanks for the setting. As Amy can tell you, I'm more at home in a train depot than anywhere else. I'll tell you why. I served in the Senate for 36 years. Because of the accident involving my kids, I started commuting 250 miles a day by rail. And I did it for over 36 years. And when I left, the conductors estimated the number of times I made a round trip from Wilmington, Delaware to Washington, D.C., and they estimated it was over 7,900 round trips. So I tell you what, being in a train depot is where I lived most of my life. And I'm still a great supporter of Amtrak. You know, every time I come to Minnesota, I'm reminded of what an incredible political tradition you have in this great state. I will not bore you all again with it, but the two men who helped shape me, helped me get elected as a 29-year-old kid, and were there for me every step of the way as recently as 3 weeks ago, were Hubert Humphrey, who's passed away, who I always called boss, who was a great supporter and friend of mine and helped me through very difficult times, as well as Fritz Mondale, who's still helping me. And the memory of Paul Wellstone. What a tradition. God, I love working with Paul, man. When he was on your side, you had your back covered. When I wrote the Violence Against Women Act, I tell you what, he just picked it up and carried it, and we all miss him, and I know you do. But folks, that tradition continues with Amy. God love Amy. Ladies and gentlemen, Amy's like my much younger sister. There's two things you got to know about her. She's tougher than you and she's smarter than you. It helps if you just acknowledge that front end. It makes everything a lot easier. The second thing you got to know, and I learned when Amy came, and as Amy will tell you, I fully embraced her being here, was excited when she came, that I also learned when she asks you something, just say yes right away and give up. Just absolutely capitulate, because you're sure of two things. One, she's right, and two, if you said no, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter. You know, Amy knows who she is. She has middle class sort of stamped in her DNA. Her value set is all of what's made this country what it is, and the passion she brings to the concerns that she has is contagious. I remember when I wrote the Violence Against Women Act, and we were holding hearings, and we're looking and past it, and we're looking at where were the models around the country to do the kind of things we wanted to nationally do. And we looked at a young prosecutor seriously, and this is not hyperbole, looked at a young prosecutor from the state of Minnesota. So Amy, you have been an incredible United States Senate and an equally incredible friend. Thank you very much. Folks, I don't have to tell you, you all know it, this country faces one of the starkest choices in my memory. And now that Governor Romney is selected as running mate, those differences are even more stark, more clear. Congressman Ryan, a good man, like Romney is a good man, has given definition to Governor Romney's vague commitments up to this point. Congressman Ryan and the congressional Republicans, as one person said, have already passed in the Republican House what Governor Romney is proposing for the whole nation. So in a sense, this is sort of like two incumbents running. You know what you're going to get. You know, seriously, I don't think it's an exaggeration. You know what you're going to get. Someone handed me a Vikings hat. I'm an Eagles fan, but I love the Vikings. As we say in football, and I'm a frustrated football player, as we say in football, these guys aren't hiding the ball. They're telling us exactly what they think. And when my mom were here, she'd say, and God love them for it, telling us exactly what they think. They call their new plan for the economy new, bold, and gutsy. But I ask a rhetorical question. What's gutsy about giving millionaires another tax break? What's bold? What's the bold about gutting Medicare and education and research and development in order to pay for that tax cut? And most of all, ladies and gentlemen, what's new? What is new about their plan? It's not only not new, it's not fair, it's not right, and the people who pay the price for their new plan are the middle class and the working poor. Folks, there's overwhelming evidence that their policies will not grow the economy. It didn't do it before, and it won't now. Folks, we've seen this movie before. And we know how it ends. We know how the movie ends. Again, not hyperbole. It ends with a Great Recession of 2008. It ended by being a catastrophe for middle-class families. Folks, with your help, we cannot go back to those days. We must move forward. We cannot go back. And the President and I and Amy and all our colleagues, we have a different way forward. We know the history of the journey of this country. From our experience, we know you don't grow the economy from millionaires down. It doesn't happen. No, this is just factually accurate in my view. We know the way to grow the economy is the way we always have, from the middle class out. That's how we've always done it. When the middle class does well, everybody does well. Everybody does well. The poor have a way up, and the rich do very, very well. Folks, what this is all about is every American having an opportunity to have a decent standard of living. A good job, where hard work is rewarded. Taking on responsibility is expected. You know, my dad used to have an expression. I think Amy remembers my dad. He used to have an expression I heard him repeat over and over again from the time I was a kid, and I mean this literally. My dad would say, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. It's about your ability to care for your family, be able to look your kid in the eye and say, honey, it's going to be okay. That's what it's about. It's more than just a paycheck. And too many hardworking Americans, through absolutely no fault of their own, have been stripped of their dignity. And millions more who still have jobs with stagnant wages, and have found it increasingly difficult to provide for their families. You know, I talk about the longest walk. You've heard me say that the longest walk a parent can make is up a short flight of stairs to their child's bedroom and say, honey, I'm sorry, you can't go back to sing in the choir next year. You can't play in that Little League team. Daddy, Mommy, we lost our job. Or the bank says we can't live here anymore. You know people who've made that walk right here in Minneapolis, right here in Minnesota. And some of you still know people tonight going to bed who will literally, not figuratively, stare at the ceiling, wondering, am I going to be able to be in this bed looking at that ceiling 3 months from now? Am I going to be okay? How many people do you know in the last year sat at their kitchen table, husband and wife, early in the morning saying, who's going to tell him? Who's going to tell John that he can't go back to the university next semester? We just can't afford it, honey. How are we going to tell him? Look, the president and I came to office determined to restore the dignity and pride of hardworking Americans, to provide them basically with the ability to care for their families. There are over 4.5 million people today who have been able, since we've come to office, to make a different walk. A walk from a manufacturing plant to their car in the parking lot to go home and tell their family proudly, I made a product today the rest of the world wants to buy, and we're okay. A walk from a graduation platform to a high-tech company, to be able to live a life and begin a life where you know the future is limitless. Look, folks, to a company that just closed down in China and is coming back home to the United States of America, because we are encouraging that. The man who able to walk out of that high-tech job and go home and say to the kids, you know, Mommy doesn't have to work 2 jobs anymore. Daddy's got a job again. Daddy's got a job again. A job I'm proud to have. And turn around and say, no, Mary, don't worry, you're going back to school. We're okay. It's set. Folks, the middle class is coming back. They have been ravaged. But they're starting to come back. We've helped them keep their homes and their health care, keep their child in college, protect them from predatory lending, and make sure the big banks don't threaten the economy with those risky financial schemes of credit default swaps, collateral debt obligations, and all this other funny stuff that brought the economy down. We've given tax breaks to companies who stay at home, not rewarding companies who go abroad. A practice, I might add, outsourcing, a practice the Washington Post said that Romney's companies pioneered. And by the way, I love when I pointed that out months ago and have been talking about it, the Romney campaign responded and said, Biden doesn't understand the difference between outsourcing and offshoring. Justin, can't you picture the conversation? 2 unemployed guys in the unemployment line. And one turns to the other and says, Charlie, were you outsourced or offshore? What difference does it make? They don't have a job. So, folks, we're trying to change the dynamic here. Admittedly, Republican obstructionism has slowed our progress, but it has not stopped our progress. In spite of them, in spite of Governor Romney's insistence of let Detroit go bankrupt, we rescued the automobile industry, saving 1 million jobs and creating 200,000 brand new, good-paying jobs. Over the objections, where they sound like squealing pigs, over the objections of Romney and all his allies, we passed some of the toughest Wall Street regulations in history, turning Wall Street back into the allocator of capital it always has been and no longer a casino, and they want to repeal it. We improved education, raising standards, demanding more of both students and teachers. We expanded the number of children in working class families able to attend college, 6 million to 9 million just since we've come to office around because of Pell Grants. And how did we do it? We didn't raise your taxes. We said we're going to stop paying the banks $60 billion. We're going to pour it right into giving them aid. We've kept faith with the warriors, like my son who returned from Iraq and Afghanistan, guaranteeing the health care they deserve, they need, and some will need the rest of their lives, and giving them the educational opportunities they're entitled to. Making jobs for that 9/11 generation of veterans a priority. Significant incentives to business and communities that hire veterans. We've cut taxes for middle-class families every year since we've been in office. And federal taxes for middle-class families are currently nearly their lowest level since Eisenhower was president. Ladies and gentlemen, we cut taxes for small businesses to help them grow. We help millions of families modify their mortgages so they could stay in their homes. And 1 million help refinance their mortgages, saving them thousands of dollars a year. And if the Republicans are getting out of the way, 14 million more Americans would be able to refinance their homes. We saw there were 600,000 manufacturing jobs in America going unfilled because lack of skills, so we coupled community colleges and businesses to prepare workers for decent paying jobs, the kind that even Romney cannot outsource. And we stood up to China, defending American tire companies when Chinese tires overwhelmed our market. And for the first time, we established a trade enforcement unit to make sure American companies are not taken advantage of. I guess I should never be surprised, but I was surprised by Romney's response to our actions when we did that. He called our actions against China protectionism. He said, quote, "It was bad for the nation. Bad that we exercised our rights under international trade agreements to stem the flow of cheap Chinese tires, saving American jobs." Tell that to the people making those tires here in the United States of America. A bad thing to save jobs? I got news for y'all. The President and I brought trade cases against China twice the rate of any previous administration. And as long as they're not playing by the rules, we're going to continue to, no matter what Romney calls it. And now, what's fascinating, like a lot of other things, I know this will shock you, Romney's changing his tune. I know that surprises you. I know you're shocked. Now he's talking tough on China. Says we're not tough enough with China. I wish he had been that tough when the companies owned by Bain were exporting thousands of jobs to China. Look, folks, we focused on China and every other country to insist they play by the rules. And we focused on bringing American jobs back home. The result, 28 straight months of private sector growth, 4.5 million new private sector jobs. 500,000 new manufacturing jobs. The fastest growth since the 80s. And Romney, I remember when Romney criticized the president for saying to young people, look at manufacturing. He said the president was out of touch. Out of touch. Swiss bank account, Cayman Islands, out of touch. I mean, whoa. Folks, I know a lot of you have said over the years. Well, I tell you what, I know you've said over the years, and I've been around a while, and here in Minnesota, my privilege a number of times. And oftentimes Democrats get frustrated and say, why can't we reduce our positions down to the bumper stickers like the Republicans do? I mean, you got to admit, you've said that, these guys, you know. Hey, I got a bumper sticker for y'all. Okay? Osama Bin Laden's dead and General Motors is alive. Osama Bin Laden is dead and General Motors is alive. Y'all want a bumper sticker? That's a bumper sticker. Kind of sums it up. Folks, that's real measurable process and progress. It's not enough, but it's important progress. And Governor Romney and Congressman Ryan are running on a theme when they announced the ticket said to, quote, restore the dreams and greatness of this country. What they didn't say is the very plans and positions the Congressman voted for and Governor Romney supported the previous 8 years put American dreams and greatness in jeopardy. How do they think this happened? How do they think we went from a balanced budget and a surplus when the last Democrat left office to the Great Recession when the Republican left office? Seriously. What did they think happened? As my little 7-year-old granddaughter Natalie would say, was a Casper the Friendly Ghost, Pop? How did it happen? What they didn't say is the day that we were sworn in, we were literally handed a bill for that year of $1 trillion deficit. Nothing we could do about it. The fiscal year started 6 months before, or 4 months before, and ended that fall. What they didn't say is how devastated the middle class was, losing an incredible part of the wealth, $16 trillion lost by seeing their 401ks, the equity in their homes evaporate. An equity they counted on in their retirement to borrow against to send their children to school. And they now say their primary care, they now say they care about the middle class. You know, my dad used to have an expression, seriously. When someone would tell them what they valued, I value this job, he'd say, look, don't tell me what you value. Show me your budget and I will tell you what you value. So let's look at what they value. I think that's fair. Let's look at what they value. Let's look at their budget. Romney wants to let the big banks once again write their own rules. No, he said in the first 100 days, that's what he wants to do. Get rid of the restrictions, quote unquote. Continue the policies that continue outsourcing. The Republicans actually voted against a proposal, a simple proposal, where the Democrats in the Congress said, look, instead of giving a tax credit for a company that unbolts machinery from a floor in Minneapolis and sends it to China or Indonesia or Vietnam or anywhere, instead of doing that, eliminate that tax cut. Don't say they can't, just say no tax cut to do it, and give a tax cut to any company in Indonesia that unbolts the machinery and sends it back to the United States. Not going to change the world, but they even voted against that. They make massive cuts in education, Massive cuts in college education. Massive cuts in Medicaid, throwing 19 million people off their health care, including 1 million seniors. People, many of whom thrown on to Medicaid because they lost their jobs through no fault of their own. What do they think? Where do they think these people are going to be able to go? Massive cuts in Social Security for future generations. They tell you blithely, if you're on Social Security, don't worry. But I want to tell you, if you're in your 20s, plan on getting about $4,600 less than your parents got. If you're in your 40s, plan on getting about $2,700 less. Delay the pain. Massive changes in health care. Allowing insurance companies to take away the very care that Justin talked about. Take away the ability again for you to be, them to tell you, you have now costed out of your policy. We're eliminating it. We've spent too much money on you already. Your child has a pre-existing condition, you do. We cannot cover you. Massive changes in Medicare. Turn it into a voucher system. Look, folks, that means simply, and people are beginning to figure out what this voucher system is. That means seniors would no longer have the guarantee of Medicare. They'd get a voucher to buy private insurance, and the amount of money they got to do it would be limited. And when health care costs goes up, you pay the difference. Health care costs go up, it's estimated that seniors would have to pay an extra $6,400 a year under the Ryan plan. How many have that? All, and all in the service of massive tax cuts for the very wealthy. You know, to maintain the Bush tax cuts for just millionaires, you have to make a minimum $1 million for what I'm about to tell you. It cost $800 billion over the next 10 years to guarantee that people above $1 million will keep their tax cut. That was supposed to have expired 2 years ago. And here's a little interesting statistic to put this in sharp relief. Of that 800 million, billion I should say, I said million, billion, 500 billion goes to 0.1% of the pie. 120,000 families get $500 billion of that tax cut. Now look, I come from a wealthy little state. I've found that wealthy people and very wealthy people are just as patriotic as poor people. But nothing's been asked of them, and they haven't asked for the need for 120,000 families to get $500 billion additional tax cut over the next 10 years. Look what we could do with that $500 billion. Everything from lowering the deficit to providing basic needs for middle-class families. And on top of that, to use President Clinton's phrase, their program is the last administration's on steroids. And here's the steroid. Literally, they are proposing, it's kind of mind-blowing, proposing another $1.6 trillion in tax cuts over the next 10 years for people who make, it almost sounds like I'm making it up, $1.6 trillion for people making a minimum of $1 million a year, an average additional tax cut of $250,000 a year on top of maintaining the Bush tax cut. And all this has a price tag, not just increasing the deficit, but a price tag for the middle class. The Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center points out even if they do what they say and eliminate deductions and loopholes, quote unquote, in the law, that the effect will be a $2,000 a year tax increase on middle-class families with children. That's not me saying it. It's a well-respected independent agency. And he calls the president, as I said again, out of touch. Ladies and gentlemen, I've never run across a presidential candidate who's a decent guy but more out of touch than Mr. Romney is right now. Ladies and gentlemen, And this is the man who says we're being unfair. The press is being unfair. We're being unfair, asking him to release his tax returns like almost every presidential candidate in the past has done. Ladies and gentlemen, folks, this is not your father's Republican Party. No, it's not. This is not your father's Republican Party. Matter of fact, this isn't even Governor Romney's father's Republican Party. This is a different group. These aren't the men and women I work with for the bulk of those years I was in the Senate. Look, we have a basic fundamental difference in our vision for America. And it rests upon a growing, prospering middle class. That's not hyperbole, that's real. And that includes a fair tax code, fostering innovation in the private sector, raising standards for education, providing access to college for every gifted, qualified child, regardless of the neighborhood they come from. We see in America, and I know you all are tired of hearing me say this, and I've been saying it long before I became vice president. Where is it written that America will not be the leading manufacturer in the 21st century? Where is that written? Why? Ladies and gentlemen, we see in America leading the world and making things the rest of the world wants and generating prosperity here at home. We see in America where my 4 granddaughters have every single solitary opportunity my grandson has as they go through life. Every single solitary one. Where women receive equal pay for equal work. Where women are able to control their own bodies. We're getting seriously ill doesn't mean you were forced into bankruptcy. Where Social Security is protected, Medicare is available to people in Medicaid in distress, and Medicare fulfills its original mission. That's why we strengthened Medicare. We extended the life of Medicare by 8 years. And the very thing that Romney wants to eliminate now, saving millions of seniors hundreds of dollars a year in their prescription drugs, allowing them to go for preventative care. That's why we proposed reforms that will save Medicare money by getting rid of wasteful spending on a health care system without cutting a penny and not cutting a single benefit that Medicare recipients have. And we see a future where we maintain the only one truly sacred obligation we have as a nation. And that's to care for those who we sent to war who come home injured and in need. Ladies and gentlemen, that need, the price of these 2 wars will last for decades. We see in America where no millionaire pays a lower tax rate than any middle-class American, where middle-class folks continue to get tax breaks to send their kids to college instead of giving tax breaks to oil companies to go out and drill for oil. A tax break they don't need, they're doing very well, thank you, right now. Where middle-class tax cuts are maintained, where taxes are not raised in the middle class, where the middle class is no longer simply played for a sucker. Because that's what's happened. That's why there's such frustration out there. In the neighborhoods I grew up in, where I come from, people don't mind doing their share. They don't mind making sacrifices in the interest of the nation. But what they really resent is when they turn around and find out everybody but a few are making the same sacrifice. That's being played for a sucker where I come from. You know, the president said it, and it's literally true. This is a make or break moment for the middle class. And folks, I haven't even talked about foreign policy. I haven't talked about what the Supreme Court would look like after 4 years of a Romney presidency. And folks, I don't have to talk about the character and conviction of the president compared to his rival. Presidential elections come down to character and the conviction of your character. The American public knowing that what you say you mean, that you will stand by what you said you would do. Folks, you'd expect me to say this. I knew Barack before he was president. I campaigned for him when he ran for the Senate. He was on my Foreign Relations, the Foreign Relations Committee, which I was the chairman. But in the last 4 years, we've become close friends. I spend 4 to 6 hours a day with him every single day until we both headed out on the road a month or so ago. And I want to tell you what I've observed. This guy has a backbone like a ramrod. This guy, I have never one single time when he's had to make a difficult domestic or foreign policy decision, I have never once seen him with his senior advisor or his cabinet, or not once with me in all the hours we spend alone. I have never once heard him ask the question, what's the political calculus for me? Not one single time. The American people are looking for a president who will put the nation above their political interests. And he has done that time and time again. So start it. Let's meet this moment together. We need you to stand with us. And with your help, we'll win Minnesota. We'll win this election. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Let's go get them. God bless you.